This is bad, guys. It's stretched, it's crooked, it's not even sitting flush against the back of my neck. The question is, can we fix this inset binding disaster and make a V-neck, which I'm happy to wear? The answer is yes, and it's stretch binding to the rescue. How'd we get here? Well, it was my first attempt at inset binding on a V-neck, and my hands are pretty clumsy, being the first time. It took way too long and way too much fiddling to get it in, and as a result, you know that V's of diagonal? That means it's cut on the bias. Bias means delicate and really prone to stretching out. So that's how we got to this disaster. And let's have a walk through the disaster. It really is not great. And I've unpicked it in the hopes that I could do it again, but no, it's not going to be done again with inset binding. It requires a very different fix. So I've got my stretchy fabric out, wasn't very much left, and I've managed to get 2 strips out to cobble together for 1 strip. It's about 4 centimeters wide. Once you've got a long strip of binding, we're going to use the stretchiness. You see how much that stretches? Significantly, and that's what we want for this type of rescue. We're going to apply it just like we normally would with stretch binding. I realise I've done videos on this before, but this one probably is going to be more helpful because it's in white and you might be able to see a little better. So I'm using the overlocker. If you're using a sewing machine, you're going to be doing a narrow zigzag. And as you can see, I stretched out the top, that binding piece, far more than the under t-shirt. Now I'm doing it even a little bit more than I normally would because I'm catering for the lack of, integrity of the underneath t-shirt. I'm putting some more stretch back in there with the stretchiness of this stretchiness. The poker device that I'm using here, otherwise known as the quick unpick, is because that material is so stretched out it's actually rolling, and I'm just trying to get it really edge to edge with my binding while I keep holding in the stretch of the binding. Now we've got to get to the V. What do? Well, we don't worry about it. Okay, we just straighten it out so it's flat, horizontal, vertical, whatever you want to know, whatever you want to call it, just flat. There's no V's, there's no corners. And we keep holding that stretch in the binding. It's got to be the same amount of feel to the stretchiness that you're holding in there all the way through to be consistent. It's a little bit more than I would normally put in because I'm trying to repair a lack of stretchiness in that t-shirt. So I'm just making that flat in the V, not that you can see, I'm sorry, my hands are busy and in the way of the camera, and putting that stretch back into the binding and not worrying about a V. I'm sewing straight. I've straightened out the V. The V will be put in later, don't worry about that, it will be a V-neck. But at the moment you're really thinking about keeping consistent stretch in that stretch binding. How do you do that? Well, I'm not going to give you a formula because every single bit of fabric is different, has different amounts of stretch. You really have to just, I would normally say about an inch, but this one is a good inch because I'm trying to repair that lack of integrity of the t-shirt. It's been stretched out. All right, now I'm going to be coming up to the join. As you can see, there's a join there. I didn't really factor in where that was going to land because I couldn't, because of that, I was going to stretch things out. Just make sure it's lying flat. I approximated it to be somewhere near the shoulder seam and to have the join up of my 2 ends of binding to be somewhere near the back. So we're coming up to that now. Again, I haven't measured. It all gets done on the garment with the feel of the stretch that I give it. So here's the end. I approximate sort of how much stretch I'm going to need for the gap that has to get covered. And then I make a marking. So here are my ends of the binding. I've put a blue mark. That's how much it's going to be needed to keep that amount of stretch against the t-shirt. And I'm just going to sew that together. If you're on the machine, that's fine. You could get away with a straight stitch. It's not going to stretch in this direction, and just cut the excess off. So now I've joined up my two ends of binding, and it's going to look like that. You can see when I put the stretch in there, it's going to lie flat. So I've kept the consistency of stretch in my binding all the way around. Put your needles back into the train tracks or the track that they were in, and go and sew up that gap. You should have a consistent amount of stretch that you're pulling in there, because you've already factored that in. You're just sewing through the gap and making sure that your needles are now running into the start of your stitch. Okay, keep that nice and neat. Let's now have a look at what we've got. Nice. Okay, now why have I done it like that? Because when you fold this over, this is now the right side of the t-shirt. Voila, no seam allowances. And we're going to top stitch along that because we get to see when we do it in this method. Being able to see is pretty important when you want to get a neat line of stitching, top stitching. We're just using a straight stitch. We do a back stitch, of course, to start. And the amount of stretch is already factored in because we put it in our first pass when we joined the binding to the t-shirt. So we're just holding that in there, and all of our attention now is being put into getting a straight line of stitching and a consistent width to our binding, which we are folding under and then folding over the seam allowance, and sometimes doing a bit of a tippity tap tap to get it to lie flat and to just help with that consistency of width. So just keep on going all the way around your t-shirt, and then we'll of course be coming up to that V in a minute. You do need to do this when you're fresh so you can have full attention, full focus. So you see my blue mark, that's my V. We're about to approach it. Again, we're not worrying about putting a V in. We are simply going to straighten it out, okay? There's no corner turning, there's no pivoting. We just focus on getting the consistent folds of our binding, and we straighten out the V. And we keep on top stitching. Now you could press those folds in that you can see I'm always putting in, and that will help you a little bit. In fact, you know, if you're wanting to be very, very careful, I do recommend it until you've got your fingers in for stretch binding. Right, you see I didn't do any pivoting, no U-shapes, nothing. I just made it flat. I just kept on going, turning the t-shirt a little bit. We're now on the opposite side, the opposite part of the V, but it's still the same job. Fold, keep the consistent width of the binding, hold the stretch in there that's already in there, and sew a really straight line of top stitching. Okay, we're almost at the end. I'm going to snip off any threads, tuck them in there to make sure I don't have anything hanging around and hanging out, and keeping a bit of a tail on the overlocking chain stops it from unraveling, so that's a good way of finishing as well if you've got something to tuck it into. And we're just going to focus on trying to match up our stitching with where we started the stitching so that there's no two uneven lines of stitching, it's just one seamless join. And we'll do a back stitch to finish as we normally would. And we're just about there. And we will be tidying up all our threads. Make sure you always do that as you go. It makes your job and your life a lot easier. But this is what it's looking like. As you can see, it's really quite a lovely, consistent top stitch going on. It's It's very flat, there's no puckers, there's just nothing. Now then we get to a U. A U, how did a U get in there? Well, that's the V, okay? It won't be a U for much longer. But when we're inspecting this, sometimes you'll have a bit of a oopsie bit with the top stitching. I just fell off the edge before I got back on. So I'm just going to unpick just that section and repair that. I thought I'd keep this in the video because this is real life and you might have these problems too. So keep your needle going in the same track, back stitch, and that'll secure all your threads from the existing thread and then from this thread that we're actually starting a seam with. And then keep that same line, consistency is what we're after, and go back into the next little bit of thread, the next bit of stitch and back stitch. Right, that's what it looks like. That's a repair job. I don't know if you can see where I've started, but it's a lot better than it was before. Okay, right there, that's where my back stitch is. It's pretty seamless. So if you make an oopsie, it is repairable. And on body, this is what it's looking like. I gave a thumbs up. It's a U, but you might be going, that looks a bit scary, Lucy. But we've got the V to do next, and it will be all okay. To put in the V with stretch binding, we put the t-shirt in half, and that forms a straight line, and then that bit with the binding sticks out. And we just want to straighten that up. So we're going to put in a pin. Now, be aware that binding is a bit thick and you'll be surprised that you can't get the pin in straight no matter how carefully you try. So take as many times as you need to. See, it's not straight. We'll do it again. And it's still not straight. We're lining up that straightness with the half t-shirt line. Okay, so the front of the t-shirt is folded in half, and yes, that's now straight. So now that we've got that straight, we're actually going to go and sew down just down there. And we're going to do it on the machine, and then we're going to do it by hand so that you can see the difference. So with the machine, sometimes this turns out for me perfectly first time. Other times it's just a real pain and I can never get it done. What the problem is that this is very, very thick. We need to get a very straight line, and we need to not have two bits of material progress at different rates. When it's thick like this, with the lip of the binding, two lips of binding, that can be difficult. So I'm just going to try and do my best, go slowly. I will do a back stitch. I will do, some smoothing out here because one piece is not progressing at the same rate, and I want the two bits of binding to meet centrally. Okay, this is a tricky bit. And then we have to keep that straight line going down as we stitch. And really that's all there is to do with this technique, except it's not that simple, as you'll see. Use the hand wheel if you need to, and do a little back stitch to end, as we normally do. So it's nice and straight, we think. It should be good, or we think. The proof is always when we open it out. All right, we've bird nested. That's because of the thickness of the fabric. We won't worry about that. We can live with that and clean that up later. But let's just see if it's really straight. Looks really straight, sewn down there, very vertical. We open it out and it's pretty good, but it's not dead central. One side is a little higher and the V at the center is not quite bang on. So the second option, if you're having trouble, is, you guessed it, your friend hand sewing. Now when you hand sew, you can get those lips of the binding smack bang together, and you've got full control over that. And it's not hard, it's just an in and out, an in and out, an in and out with very, very small stitches, because you kind of want it to look as neatly done as a machine with the control of hand stitching to boot. And I will do another pass over this when I'm satisfied that this was the way to go. Sometimes I have to undo it and unpick it and try again. I kind of find you just don't know, but this is a pretty much a safer bet than my sewing machine for pinching out this little bit of the V. right, I'm almost done, almost down to the end of that straight line, meeting up with the fold half of the t-shirt. Let's just knot that off. Okay, and let's have a look at it. It's very straight. How perfectly crisp is that? That's dead central in the V. Like I said, I'm going to go over it again. Now, what happens if you don't get it in a way that you like it? You can always disguise it. This is a little bit of wash away dritz. It's like a double-sided tape. It will wash away. And I'm just going to cut myself a little bit of this to help me put my embellishment on before I hand sew it. And it's like hand sewing on a button, this particular embellishment that I found, which is plastic, lightweight, and really nice. So this is what I'm using. It is vertical, so that helps enhance that vertical line that we want to enhance of the V. And I think that this has done a really nice job of lifting as well as disguising and simulating perfection. And I do like that. So that's my job done. My disaster is now a highly wearable tee, and this forms the third way of doing a V-neck in our series. So we've covered inset binding, one way sewn from behind, one way crossover, and this one is your stretch binding and how to do a V-neck with stretch binding. I hope you've enjoyed this series. I am going to be doing something different with this t-shirt next week, so I will see you then, and enjoy your comfy life. Don't forget to subscribe by clicking on my face. I'll see you then.